This world is rife with tales of old, stories which shiver and turn your blood cold. Some speak of heroes who charge in to save from monsters who seek to drag you to your grave. Both hold their ground as they clash and fight, but the hero prevails and all is made right. These stories will calm a sad, restless head, but most heroes are gone and not all monsters dead. This is an old tale, so I'll set the stage. Kurt was a young boy of 10 years of age. He lived on a farm where they harvest and sow near a small German town 3 centuries ago. The woodlands were dense, other townships were far, but they lived by a river known as the Isar. At home with his parents, his sister and brother, and last but not least, his sweet old grandmother. Like most people then, his family was poor, just working the land as their family before. It wasn't all bad, with love in their home, the land was quite peaceful for any to roam. For a good bit of fun, they would visit the river, the cool running water just calling them hither. On one fateful day, Kurt went by himself to stand in the water's great natural wealth. He'd skip a few stones and stare at the fish. He'd hoped to catch some for a family dish. When he arrived, he just played instead. He splashed in the river, though watched where he tread. The shallows were fine for any to stray, but the centre was deep and he'd be swept away. Kurt loved the water, it was his domain. It can stir up your heart or wash away pain. Tired from play, Kurt let out a sigh, but before he could leave, a glint caught his eye. Close to the shore, at rest in the dirt, was a glimmering shard which puzzled young Kurt. He waded on over to see what unfold. As he picked up the shard, it looked just like gold. Shining one side, but dark the reverse, the joy in his heart, he just couldn't converse. Looking around and scanning the stream, there in the mud he saw several more gleam. Shifting the mud, he collected some more, but a break in the water sent him jumping to shore. He assumed it a fish that made the big splash, but it was getting late, so for home he did dash. While on his way, his hopes on the rise, he thought of a plan for a family surprise. He'd cache the gold and return the next day. He'd scour the river, for more he did pray. So once he was back, Kurt hid all the treasure. His loved one's surprise would bring him much pleasure. That night hurried past, a new dawn soon rose. Excitement gripped him from his head to his toes. He did all his chores, and with all said and done, Kurt made for the river with an unstoppable run. Soon he was there, and just as before, he sifted and scanned all along the old shore. After some time, he found a new shard, but finding some more was really quite hard. Displacing the mud, he barely found any, but there further in were now a great many. The water got deeper, where the glimmers now stir, but if he was careful, nothing bad should occur. Slowly he moved and watched where he tread, till he stood by the gold in the soft riverbed. With so many shards, he'd have to come back, but now he'd go home and hide the new stack. Now so very pleased with what he had found, but attention was caught by a discomforting sound. The top of the water did ripple and foam. Kurt felt offset, it was time to go home. He made back to shore, looking back on a whim, where a shift in the water, as if moving for him. The movement was faint, as Kurt tread and peered, but when back on shore, it had just disappeared. He felt this was odd, but had what he was after. Kurt made for home with a satisfied laughter. Making his journey with a childish ease, Kurt did not see the figure watching him from the trees. Upon his return, he snuck to his spot, where he hid the gold, all part of his plot. But as he approached his small hidden hoard, as a voice called to him, and his heart nearly soared. It was his grandmother, who held a warm smile. She asked where he'd been, since he'd been gone a while. He stuttered and mumbled the excuse he was using. She could tell he was lying, which she found too amusing. Calming and sweet, "May I now see what you have in your hands that you're hiding from me?" Reluctantly so, Kurt showed her his prize, but a cold, worried look then filled up her eyes. "You've been to the river and gathered all this? Is it true, my boy?" She wasn't amiss. His smile had faded and gave a quick nod. To see her this worried was really too odd. "This is not gold, but something far worse. A temptation of sorts. It's almost a curse. It's left by a creature in our rivers and streams. It sets traps for humans and drowns out their screams. Shedding its scales to lure us in deep, it sees us as food, a harvest to reap. An old predator, the hunt it does revel. We call it FLUSS TEUFEL, the one river devil." Kurt was afraid, understandably so. His gran made him swear he would no longer go. So Kurt crossed his heart, and while somewhat deterred, he swore not to go. She took him by his word. The rest of the day dragged on for the boy. His hopes dashed away and depleted his joy. Throughout of his dreams, he was standing waist deep in a river of treasure. It was all his to keep. But as he enjoyed the riches unbound, a shadow dragged Kurt to the depths to be drowned. A long sleepless night had Kurt feeling haunted, but daylight still came, unopposed and undaunted. Sleepy and saddened, Kurt pushed on and worked. No matter his feelings, chores would not be shirked. So tired was Kurt, he did not pay attention to the stranger approaching with no apprehension. Before he could scream, a hand held him mute. The culprit as such was a tall and thin brute. He carried the lad away from the farm, Kurt's heart beating hard from this sudden alarm. Kurt was so scared, he just shook and shiver, when what came into view was the forbidden river. Kurt was held out in an anxious aggression. He now saw the man who left a frightening impression. His face was disheveled, his breath reeked of bile, and he sneered at young Kurt with a near toothless smile. "I saw you with gold, now you'll get some for me. Do just as I say, and I'll let you go free." Kurt was too scared, but nodded a yes. The man placed him down, for the water they press. Into the river the two made their way, the man keeping close, lest Kurt go astray. They sifted the mud, but found nothing instead. The man grew impatient, Kurt felt only dread. Feeling as though he would not leave alive, a splash in the water, where something did dive. It was only a fish, now get back to work. But Kurt knew the truth of what surely lurk. He could see a line where the creature did swim, so thought up a plan, his hope on a whim. "There, in the middle, that's where it must be." Now all it would take is for the man to go see. "Well, go on then," he said, snapping at Kurt. This plan must succeed, or he'd be more than hurt. "There, it's too strong. I'll be swept away. You can go see, and here I will stay." The man looked unsure, but snorted a grunt. He motioned to stay, and kept his eyes front. He splashed his way over, and shifted the ground, still staring at Kurt, until he saw what he found. He brought up his hand, and there shining bright was the shards from before, now caught in the light. The man laughed aloud, and reached in for more, praising his fortune to increase he implore. Kurt didn't move, and patiently wait. What would happen next was now up to fate. Splashing and laughing, he was helplessly glad, but stopped in surprise when he looked at the lad. Kurt's face said it all, fear he just couldn't hide, staring not at the man, but off to his side. Turning his gaze, he just about saw the creature approaching with its wide open jaw. Dropping the shards, a chill filled his blood. He tried to escape, but was stuck in the mud. He screamed out for help, but Kurt couldn't move. A fin pierced the surface in a menacing groove. Breaching the water, it snatched at its meal. Its body was huge, a great monstrous eel. It re-entered the water before else could be said, and carried its meal up the river stained red. Kurt took a moment before going to shore, his nerves feeling weak and his heart aching sore. But he was alive and ran straight for the farm, back to his family, and was now far from harm. So here's a lesson, to you I'll concede, all places have monsters, and all wish to feed. Good day, I'm Jar19 and thank you for listening. So, what did you think of FLUSS TEUFEL? And how did you like my German accent? I can only do stereotypes, unfortunately, and they don't get any less offensive from here, so we'll just have to watch where we tread in future. I've been meaning to write a water-based monster for a while now, and so I'm glad that I finally got round to writing one. I kept thinking about all of those old German fairy tales and thought, Germany? Yeah, that'll do. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then perhaps subscribe, leave a like, and if you're feeling particularly cheeky, maybe even a comment. I do hope that you'll join me again. Stay safe, sleep well, but remember, here we make monsters.